Hello, my name is Tessa McBurney, and I'm the Atlantic Bat Conservation Project Technician with the Canadian Wildlife Health Cooperative Atlantic Region. And today I'm going to go over how to upload stationary point survey acoustic data to the NABat website. So before you do this, you're going to have to make sure that all of the files, all of the stationary point survey files within a grid cell have been manually identified. And there are other videos that go through instructions on how to do that. So at this point, I have manually identified all of my files, so I can proceed with uploading the data to the NABat website. So the first thing you're going to do is open your Kaleidoscope converter window. So again, you can just click on the desktop icon for Kaleidoscope, and that will open your converter window. There we go. So now we need to change our input and output directories. So let's start with the input directory. And we're going to go back to our NABat folder for this year. So this would be all of the data that have now been manually identified. And we are going to select all of the stationary sites from within the process data folder. So I'm going to go into process data and stationary survey. And I'm going to select the overarching stationary survey folder. So this will include all 4 of your stationary survey sites. So I'm going to select my stationary folder. And for outputs, I'm going to select the matching folder, but the one we created already for metadata. So again, NABat acoustics for this year, process data, and then your stationary survey metadata folder, which you have already created. Okay, so I'm going to select that folder. Great, so that should be good. And now I'm going to change my project form. So if you have default project form here, you're going to select the drop down and you're going to select add or replace a project form. So you would have already downloaded these forms from the website in the video where you first process the data. So if you forget where you download those forms from, just watch the video on processing your data. And our guide will also have a link to the website to remind you where you can download these forms. So I downloaded them when I processed the data. So I'll just pull that form up now. Okay, so remember, these are the forms that we downloaded previously. And this time I'm going to select the mobile meta output only KPro form. So we wouldn't have used this form yet. Oh, sorry, the stationary one. We're going through stationary data now. So NABat stationary meta output only KPro. So this is the form we want to use now. And then you'll select open. I'm not going to open it because I already have that form saved on here, but I am going to select it. So my stationary meta output only KPro. Great. So now that I've done that, and this is important, I'm going to unselect the box next to WAV files. And if you also have the box selected next to 0 cross files, unselect that as well. We want both of these boxes to be empty because if not, when we process the files, it will actually create new files. It will actually process the files again, and we don't want new acoustic files to be created. We already have our acoustic files saved. So we don't need to duplicate those files. So make sure that those boxes are unchecked. And once you do that, you can click on the Process Files button in the bottom right. Some of our other settings were changed. So again, you're going to have to click OK. And then it's going to process our files. There, and once the files have all been processed, it will open the first file within those folders again, but we don't need to have that open now. We've already manually ID'd, as you can see, all of those files. So you can just close that. So let's look at what that created for us. So you can find the files that were created if you go back to your NABat acoustics for that year, process data, and then of course you'll want your stationary survey metadata folder. And now you can see that this folder has become populated. We've created some files. There won't be any acoustic files because we didn't recreate or duplicate those files when we unselected these boxes. So that's okay, that's correct. But we do have some other files here. So if you're using the free version of software, you will have a log.txt file. And you already did create this when you processed your data the first time, but it's just a file that keeps a record of each step of the file processing, and it can be used for diagnostics if an error occurs. You'll also have a new settings.ini file, which keeps a record of the settings used in the Kaleidoscope converter window during the data processing stage. So I already showed you how to do this in another video, but if you ever want to open that file to open up the same settings you used in the Kaleidoscope converter window, you just go to File, Load Settings, and select that file. You are in the stationary survey metadata folder. If you select that and click Open, it will replicate those settings that you used when you processed the data. We also have a GPS.csv in here because in the converter window, I still left that option on, extract GPS to CSV. So again, we've duplicated that file. Again, if you do not want that file, you can disable your extract GPS. We also have the metadata.csv, and this is the file that contains all of the metadata that were entered in the NABat metadata form in the Kaleidoscope converter window back when we processed the data. So we'll also provide a list of all the files recorded within the stationary point survey site, and this spreadsheet is where the manual IDs should have been now populated. Okay, so this will look like the meta.csv that was created when you processed the data. So all of your metadata is still there. But if you go over, now your manual ID column should also be populated, which it is. So that's great. All of your manual IDs have now been saved in this metadata file. So just, you'll want to scroll down and just make sure that all of your manual IDs did transfer over properly. Sometimes there are a few manual IDs missing. So let's just check here. We're going to scroll through. Sorry, a lot of data to scroll through, but it's looking good so far. And although this is called meta.csv, in the guide, it will be referred to as metadata.csv because there is already that original meta.csv you created when you process the data. So just to distinguish between the two files so it isn't too confusing, just keep that in mind if you are reading through the guide. Okay, keep going. Great. Excellent. Almost there. Excellent. So all of the data seem to transfer over properly. So that's fantastic. Okay. So just a note now, if you are using the purchase version of software, which I have on my computer, you will also produce this db-batch.wdb file. And this file is used to upload metadata to a database, but it is not used for uploading metadata to the NABat database. So we don't need to worry about that, and you won't be using that file. You can see we also have a new id.csv and a new id summary.csv, which we also created when we first processed the data. So that should be the same file, although you can see the manual ID is also already populated in this file. So those files are exactly the same as the ones that were created earlier. although with the ID summary, you can see there's now more detail in that summary than the files earlier, because the files earlier would have been created for each individual site, and now this ID summary is the data from all 4 of your stationary sites. And that will be true for also for the ID.csv and the meta.csv. You've now combined the data from all 4 stationary sites. And you can actually see that here as you scroll through the site. You can see that there are files in here from all 4 sites. There we go, and now farm, okay? So if for some reason some of your manual IDs did not transfer properly, you may have to cut and paste those manual IDs from another file. So if you're using the pro version of Kaleidoscope, you can cut and paste your manual IDs from the ID.csv spreadsheet. Unfortunately, if you are using the free version, you will have to reopen the file in Kaleidoscope Viewer and find the manual ID that you have in the identification field and then manually type that into the metadata spreadsheet, because the manual IDs, when you're using the free version, do not automatically populate in either of the spreadsheets. Okay, so if you're using the pro version, you would have to sort both the ID.csv and this meta.csv appropriately. So you go to sort and filter, custom sort, and if you sort by, and then audio recording name, okay, so that sorts by this column here. Okay, and then if you open your ID.csv for the site that you're missing the data from, so you'll have to check, because remember this meta.csv sheet has data from all 4 sites. So let's say you're missing a manual ID from Forest Trail. So you'll follow that over. Okay, then you'll have to go back to your process data, stationary survey, Forest Trail, open your ID.csv, and then again, you'll want to sort. Okay, so now we've sorted by the in file. So let's see if that's the same. So we're looking for file 213921. File 213921. So that's the same file first. So then you'd be able to copy and paste. You want to make sure that you'll want to check a few files to make sure that they're in the same order. Like the next one is 215950. Next one is 21555950. So that's the same. So then you'd be able to cut and paste, or sorry, copy and paste data from your manual ID column here if a manual ID is missing, and you can paste it into the meta.csv column here. Okay, so that's if you have the purchased version of software. I'm just going to close this. If you have the free version of software and this manual ID is missing, unfortunately, you would have to open the actual acoustic file. So nine two one two one three. Okay, so you'd have to open this file here. And then you'd have to check in the identification box what your manual ID was. I ID'd it as noise. And then you would have to type that into the manual ID box. unfortunately, that is how you would have to do it. Okay, so I'm going to close that. So that is what you do if you are missing some of the manual IDs. Okay, so now that we've made sure all of our manual IDs are there and they're all good, I'm going to go back to my metadata file folder, and I'm going to rename this meta.csv with a descriptive and original name that will not be able to be duplicated on the NABat website. So if someone else has a file with the exact same name, they can overwrite each other on the website. So you'll want to make sure that whatever you name this file, no one else would name their file the same thing. So it's always good to maybe use your organization and then NABat, and it's our stationary survey, and the year is 2020. So I know this won't be duplicated because we're the only ones in our organization uploading data, and we will only be uploading one round of stationary survey data from 2020. So that's fine. So that's good. And now that we've renamed our meta.csv file, we can upload our data to the website. So you will go back to your nabatmonitoring.org. And log in again using the partner portal on the top right. Log in. Log in with ScienceBase. Go to the projects page. Oops. Now select the project that you want to upload your data to. So the project with the appropriate grid cell, which I have here. And once I do that, I'm going to click on this upload survey data button in the top right, this turquoise button. And we are uploading stationary acoustic point data. So I'm going to click on that. And we are going to upload full metadata. So click on the full metadata button. And now we are going to select our file. So click on the blue select file button. And now we are going to select that meta.csv file that we renamed. So bear with me for a second. Process data, stationary survey metadata, and our CSV file that we renamed, and open. Great, so now this has resulted in what's called the bulk upload table. So this table is assessing the first 300 rows of data for errors, which you can see here at the bottom. So for the preview, 0 errors have been discovered in 102 rows. And it's also indicating if we have the appropriate columns. So 38 of our columns have matched. We're not missing any required columns. And we don't have any extra columns added in there with data that isn't included in the NABat metadata form. So that's all good. So we can actually scroll through this form and see if there are any errors. So if there are errors, they will be highlighted in red. But we don't have any errors, so that's great. If you did have an error highlighted in red, it's likely just a formatting issue, and you can actually click on the drop down of that column to see what your options are for that column. So if you do have an error, maybe in your software type, it gives you all of the different software options so you can see what it should actually be to be approved in the table. But yeah, luckily we don't have any errors. So that's great. If you do have errors, you should close this and fix those errors before you continue. So just reopen your, you can reopen your renamed CSV and fix those errors before you attempt to upload the data, just to save time. But we don't have any errors, so we can now click on this turquoise submit button in the bottom right. Okay, so this is our metadata sheet now popped up here next to stationary acoustic. That's the type of survey it is. So it's still processing. You can see 0 rows have been processed. And so we have to wait. But this is where we will find out if there are any additional errors within our sheet. So that bulk upload table only really scans the first 300 rows or so for errors. So there could be errors further down. We don't know yet. So we have to wait and see. Okay. So it's processed all of the rows. You can see that 825 errors have been found. That's not great. So we need to be able to fix those errors. So if we click on this hyperlink with the errors, we can download a summary that lets us know where the errors are. So let's do that. If you don't fix the errors, NABat will actually screen out any data that has errors, and it won't use those data. So it's important to fix those errors. So let's download and see. Okay. All right. So for these ones, our audio recording time was not within the start and end times. You know what the mistake is? For some reason, I put 2019. Okay, I don't know if I typed that in wrong or if that, I must have just typed it in wrong. So it's easy to see how mistakes can be made. Right, so it should be 2020. So let's fix those. Sorry, not in this sheet. This is the error sheet that tells us what's wrong. So we don't need to worry about that. So let's go back to our renamed CSV. So let's fix that. So you can just fix it by typing it in. Oh, it was for a few of our sites. I made that mistake. Okay, so I fixed that in all of those cells. Let's go back up here to where our error started. Started here. And let's just fix these. Okay, let's save it. Okay, and now we can try again. So just to show you again in that error sheet, which will be in your downloads, if you do download it. So it's basically just your meta.csv or your renamed meta.csv, but it adds a column at the very end. It gives you, it will tell you the row number that the error's in. So I have errors in all of these rows, and then an error column will tell you what the error is. And obviously, it's pretty self-explanatory. Like it tells you exactly what the error is right here, like the audio recording time was not within the start and end times. And then you just have to look at your data and figure out where the mistake is, which took me a few minutes. But yeah, so that's really useful. So once you find out where the errors are, you actually don't need that sheet anymore. So once those errors have been fixed, we'll have to re-upload the data. So we can select this gray undo button for that survey that we already uploaded. And I'm going to undo this upload. So click the red undo this upload button to remove the data that you've erroneously uploaded. Okay, it's now removed that upload. So now we have to go back to upload survey data, stationary acoustic point, full metadata, and we're going to re-upload our fixed spreadsheet. So we fixed it within our rename CSV. So let's open it. It's going to review those first few rows of files again. No errors, great, let's submit. Okay, and let's see if we were successful this time. Okay, this is looking good. So our stationary acoustic form has been processed and we have 0 errors this time. Great, success. Fantastic. So once you have 0 errors, you've managed to upload all of your data without errors. So NABat will accept all of your data. Okay, so let's go back to the details tab over here. And let's have a look at what it looks like now that the data are all uploaded. So you're going to select the cell where you just uploaded data to. So that's the cell for us, our grit cell. And then if you're under the stationary acoustic button here, the data you just uploaded should now be here. So you can see I have, oh, this one can be deleted. That's an error. So I have data here uploaded for 2 years. This is where there was an error that I accidentally had 2019 in there. So I'm actually going to delete that row. And now we have the proper data, 2020. Great. So now you can click on one of the sites. So let's click on the first site, farm. Okay, so once you click on one of your sites, you have some different tabs now. Okay, so in this first tab here, you can see where the detector is placed in our grit cell, so that's useful. You can also add some information in here with the green edit button. So if you need to fix something within here, like the time, or you need to fix the location of your detector, you can do that. You should be able to do that in here. So once you do that, you can click save or cancel. You probably don't want to delete this survey site unless you want to delete all of the data you uploaded. So I'm just going to click cancel for now because I don't want to change anything. And now you can see we have these other tabs under here. So let's go to deployment details. Okay, so this will have all of the information that was submitted about the site location. So that can be useful, and obviously the map is just above. So this is where you can add your detector and your mic type if you didn't do that in the form in Kaleidoscope. I can also go in and add clutter and habitat, which is really important. So I can always go in and do that later. You can also add comments if you have any comments. So you'll just click the green edit button to edit these data in here. So that's great to be able to add that in. So once you do that, you can click save or hit the red cancel button. Next, you have the Echolocation Measurements tab here. Okay, so this will give a summary about the acoustic files and the species. So you can see all of the manual IDs are here. And you can see the species count by manual ID, mostly 40K Mayo. But over here in this little table, you can see the breakdown. So, and this would be at this one site. So we recorded 4 little brown myotis here and 2 potentially northern myotis, and then the rest we manually ID'd as 40K myo. So that can be helpful. The reason the auto ID here the reason it was not populated is that it didn't transfer over from the id.csv sheet. So if you also want the auto ID listed, which is a good idea, you'd have to copy that column and paste it into the auto ID column before you upload those data. And then it will also populate the auto ID section here. Okay, so I actually went back and included our auto ID data so you could see. I didn't make you watch because it's a bit of a painful process, but basically I just had to sort my id.csv and then my metadata.csv sheet, and then copy and paste the auto ID column from each stationary site and put it in the metadata.csv sheet. And then also Kaleidoscope uses the 6-letter code, and NABat only accepts the 4-letter species code. So then I had to just do a search and replace and change all of the 6-letter codes to the 4-letter codes before I could upload those data. But now that I've done that, you can see, so now you have a nice little pie chart for auto ID and then one for manual ID as well. So that's an interesting comparison. And in the table, you will also have your auto ID versus your manual IDs. So that is interesting as well. And you can see for each file, there's more information given. You can see the auto ID versus your manual ID, and there's also a little graph here on deployment effort per monitoring night, which is interesting to look at. So you're basically looking at breakdown of files over the course of your, in this case, 7-day monitoring period. Okay. So now if we continue scrolling down, we can go to the raw auto ID output tab. And this is where it allows you to upload additional data sheets to save with your other data on the NABat website. So I think this is a great option. So this is where you can upload your original meta.csv outputs, which can be helpful. Or if you're using, also if you're using the pro version of software, you can upload your id.csvs, or if you have any raw, like printed out data sheets that you've scanned on the computer, you can upload them here just to save them here as well. So let's upload some of our raw data sheets. So you'll click on the upload raw auto ID files and then the blue select files. So let's upload the id.csvs for each of our sites. So if we go back to stationary survey and then the farm, and of course, all of your data sheets need to have different names. So let's rename this to farm, oops, id.csv, or maybe that'll be easier to read. Okay, so let's upload our farm sheet, and then let's select our other sites as well. So our forest trail. I don't like the way I named the first one, so I'm just going to press this X here to remove that one. I'm just going to rename it so it's a little easier to read with a space. So once you have your file selected, you can select the green upload button here. And then once it's done, you can close this window and you can see I have all 4 of my id.csv data sheets uploaded for each of the sites here. So that's one option. Right now I am under the Forest Trail tab. So alternatively, you could just have the Forest Trail sheet here. So I'm going to remove the other data sheets. So we just have Forest Trail. And then next, going down, you have the Images tab. So this allows you to upload images of your site, which are really useful to go back and see exactly where you had the detector and the microphone placed, what the clutter was like, if there was water nearby. I think that's really useful. So I always take photos of our sites. So we're on the Forest Trail. So I'm going to upload the photos I took this year. I took a few different photos, so I'm going to upload all of them. So select your files, and then you can hit the green upload button. You can see the status as they're uploading. Great, and done. There, all of your image files are here. So if you are sharing these data with anyone else and they're looking at your results, then they can see that you have some site images and they can click on them to download them. So that can be a really helpful resource. Great. So another option you have is to actually upload your acoustic files directly to the NABat website. This is good practice because it creates a backup for all of the acoustic data files, and then it also enables other individuals working on the same project to access the files if they need to. So if you go up to projects, at the top of the screen here, oops, we're already under projects. But you have the option here, the green or teal button, upload audio recording. So you can click on that. And then select the blue select files button. And then you can select your audio files. I'm going to select the process files. But yeah, you can upload all of your files here. So for this, let's see if this works. If I can just hit farm and open. No, so I have to go through and actually select all of the audio files. So this will take a little while to actually go through and select them. You can see. So don't actually have a large number of files here at once because it does take time to process. So it is good to do them in little chunks if you can. So I'm going to go through and select all of our files. So that might just take a minute here. And then just click on the green upload button once you are ready to upload those files. Okay, so now all of the acoustic files from one of our sites have been uploaded. So let's see what that looks like. I believe we uploaded the data for the farm site. Just needs a minute to load. Okay, so let's go down to our Echolocation Measurements tab. And now that we've uploaded all of our acoustic files, you can see that they're now highlighted in blue. They're blue hyperlinks. So we're actually able to click on that. So when you click on it, it lets you download the file. And then you can open that up. So there's our file there. And you can see the manual identification is still saved there because I did upload the process files. So that could be helpful for your colleagues or anyone else who has shared the project with you. And now you can look at it and play it back if need be. So that's a handy function of the website. So if any of the files do not show up in blue hyperlinks, as a blue hyperlink, you likely just missed that file. So you can go back and upload that file if you missed it. So yeah, the website will automatically match your uploaded files with the file in your spreadsheet that you uploaded. So it just does that for you automatically, which is pretty useful. Okay. So that's everything for uploading your stationary point acoustic survey data. So of course you'll want to go through each site and upload all of your acoustic files and add your photos and your meta.csv or your id.csv sheet. So you will have to do that for each site. Yeah, it's pretty handy to be able to see all of your sites on a map like this. Yeah, so I hope that was helpful.